Good evening. This is Aislinn coming to you from my outdoor meditation area. This is where I contemplate, meditate, and do just a little spell work from time to time. This is Pathways and Provocations, a series where I like to talk about a pagan topic that perhaps annoys me, bothers me, or that I find controversial or in need of discussion. This is direct, not a lot of fluff, and dedicated to real talk in the pagan world. I do not like to rant. I try not to do so, but those who know me will know I am not easy to irritate, and when I do get irritated, I try to be quiet and gentle and yet still direct about it. And today I'm tackling a growing annoyance in the witchy world, something that more and more people seem to be doing, and it's starting to annoy. So, again, I do not try to rant, but sometimes certain things have to be said. And today, what I am going to call out is imaginary bloodlines. And what I mean by this is I'm a sixth generation witch. Are you really? Or my great-grandmother was a village wise woman, so therefore I am an 8th generation witch. Really now? Because the witchcraft runs in my blood is fine, right? My grandfather did this, my great-great-grandmother did that, my many times great whatever. There's a lot of things you could plug in there. The witchcraft runs in my blood is by itself fine. That's not what bothers me. What bothers me is people asserting that what they have, the magical knowledge that they have, was passed down to them from their mother, and then from her mother, and from her mother before that, and that it is sacred and immutable, and I'm not going to share it with anyone, but because I have this heritage, it makes me better than you. And that is bothersome. All right? A generational witch is not someone whose grandmother muttered over tomato stew and stirred it counterclockwise. That to claim to be a generational witch, your mother and your grandmother and her mother would have had to be practicing a tradition that has been passed down in that family with a continuous unbroken line. Now, I'm not saying that that is never the case. All right, there are some rare cases, and I do mean rare, where a person is practicing a tradition that was passed down to them from their mother or their father. We are not being sexist here. It can also come from your father. And that parent obtained their magical knowledge from one of their parents. And one of their parents, biological or adopted, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to the discussion. So the problem here is that while it can be passed down, it's incredibly rare. And people who have that in their background, who have a true family tradition that has been passed down through the generations, don't usually lead with that. If you know them, if you know someone who does have that in their family, you probably don't know it. They're unlikely to just brag about it. It's not something they would necessarily share. I'm not saying they would never share it with you. You might be close enough to them that it comes up. But in general, you simply would not find yourself sharing this information. And why does this bother me? Why do I care if someone over there is claiming to be a 7th generation witch? Well, it bothers me because it devalues real practice, study, and experience. It's saying that just because my mother practiced for 40 years and then she passed those traditions down to me, that my practice is better than yours, that my practice is more valid. Even though you might have been studying for longer, and you might have more experience. Just the fact that my family has the experience, that makes me superior. It does usually come from a place of status seeking, right? They're not confident enough, so they latch on to something that might have been in their family. They're not confident enough in their own study skills and their own practical skills that they have to latch on and say, well, my great-great-grandmother did this, therefore my way of practicing is superior. It also feeds into gatekeeping. Paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, it's not supposed to be about gatekeeping. It is supposed to be open to all. And yes, certain traditions are more secretive, are initiatory. All of these things are true. But paganism, Wicca, and witchcraft in general is not supposed to be exclusionary. It's supposed to include everyone. It is supposed to be open to everyone. We are not supposed to gatekeep the ability to worship nature, the ability to connect with the greater world, with that which is beyond ourselves. We are not supposed to do that. And the whole, my practice is more valid than your practice, is a form of gatekeeping, which to me is contrary to what paganism has always been to me. It also creates fake hierarchies from what's supposed to be a personal, empowering path. It doesn't really matter if my grandmother was a practicing whatever, insert whatever you like. Does it really matter? Does that make my practice more valid than yours? I would say no. Of course it does not. So, a bit about my own background here, for full disclosure. I've been practicing for almost 40 years. Yes, I know that makes me not young. I am aware. But I've been practicing for nearly 40 years. Has there been anyone in my history, that in my family background, that has called themselves a witch? Well, yes and no. My grandfather was what they called a water witch. Way back in the 20s and 30s out in Alberta, if you needed a well and the drilling company just had no idea where to dig, they'd hire my grandfather. He was the water witch, dowsing rods and all. Did he proclaim some kind of mystical lineage? No, to him that wasn't even mystical anyway. To him it was simply an ability he had. All right? Do I have other mystical people in my lineage? Well, I have a little bit of Romani in me, and then I am full of Scandinavian and Celtic people. All right? I have a little bit of Romani. Everything else is Scandinavian and Celtic. British Isles. That's who I am through and through. Are there people who practiced magical paths in that lineage? Of course there are. Does that make me a 200th generation whatever? Of course not. I had to learn the hard way, just like everyone else has to. I had to study and practice and find mentors where it applied, figure out my own path, decide what worked for me and what didn't work for me. I had to do everything the same way you had to do things. I had to go on a journey of self-discovery. And all of this is not changed by the fact that my grandfather was a water witch in Alberta, which I don't live in Alberta. It's been a long time since my family lived in Alberta, but he was a water witch in Alberta. That doesn't make my lineage any more impressive than yours. It simply doesn't, and it wouldn't. It shouldn't. So why do people say things like, well, I'm a 5th generation such and such tradition? One, especially if it's not true. Most of the time when people say this, it is not true. So why do people say it? First, insecurity is a big part of it. Trying to sound credible, wanting some instant respect. They definitely would like to elevate themselves, especially if it's a younger person surrounded by people who've been practicing for a long time. If it's a younger person surrounded by people who've been practicing for a fair bit, then yeah, they might feel a little undervalued. They might feel that they don't quite belong. So then they might latch on to a story from their family's history. And it might become a, well, my grandma. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It also might be social media clout. So in today's world of YouTube, that's where you found me. In today's world of YouTube and social media and being on Facebook and being on, what's that new one, Blue Sky or whatever, in all of that, sometimes you're trying to make yourself stand out from the pack. Sometimes you're trying to make yourself look a little different. Maybe you want to attract followers that other people don't have. And so you figure I'm a 6th generation such and such witch will attract more viewers. And if you make your money on social media, that might actually matter. So it could simply be chasing clout. It could also be a much simpler explanation, a romanticizing of the past. Romanticizing of the past happens. Okay, it is not unique. It is not something that is rare at all. Everyone does it. When we look at the medieval times and imagine we were in medieval princesses, we're romanticizing the past because it wasn't that much fun. So it is something that we tend to do, and it could simply be that the person you're talking to who is making these claims is romanticizing their family history. They heard something and they've created it into something else in their own heads. They're not necessarily lying to you. They're romanticizing or making more of it than it is. Exaggerating is the word I was searching for there. It could also be ancestral magic confusion. Now, ancestral magic is a real thing, but it's not the same thing as being a 7th generation witch. A 7th generation witch would be someone who was taught by their parent, and they were taught by their parents, and they were taught by their parents, and on through 7 generations. Ancestral magic is different in that you are accessing the magic of your ancestors. To do that, you don't necessarily need a parent or a grandparent who practiced at all. You are simply accessing, and ancestral magic is available to everyone, even if you don't think you have anything mystical in your background. Ancestral magic is an entirely different topic that we will get into in an entirely different video. So it could be that they are confusing ancestral magic with generational teaching. They're not the same thing. So what actually matters in witchcraft and paganism then? One personal experience, I would say nothing matters more than the experiences you yourself have had. All right? Nothing matters more than that. Nothing. Also, study, growth, practice, and community. The more you study, the more you know. And knowledge is power. The more you learn, the more you grow. The more you practice, the better you become. And the more you connect with your community, the more you have a chance to learn that which is not necessarily native to you, right? Something outside of your own experience. And that is a wonderful thing. We can all learn something new, shouldn't we? We should never stop learning. I don't care whether you're 6 or 60. You should always be open to learning. And you can learn through your community. Ethics matter as well. Are you basically a good, decent person? I'd rather hang out with a basic, good, decent person who has no experience than a person of questionable ethics who is an 8th generation witch. I would much rather have the beginner in my circle. Intention matters as well, as does shadow work, how much of it you've done, what your motives were. Witchcraft is a practice, not a pedigree. You don't need to have had 7 generations of women in your family practicing magic in order to be valid and included. Being a witch isn't about your bloodline. It's about what you do when no one's watching. It's about how you commune with nature. It's about being present in the moment, being willing to learn, and accepting the many varied practices that make up paganism, Wicca, and witchcraft. Because frankly, no two practices are alike, and they shouldn't be. Your practice should be unique to you. So it doesn't matter if your mother practiced and her mother practiced and her mother practiced. It doesn't matter. Your practice should be unique to you. And if it isn't, then perhaps you haven't quite discovered the path that is right for you just yet. You don't need a magical ancestry to be valid. You are already valid. You just need to do the work. You need to study. You need to pursue your path. You need to embrace a magical life. You don't need a pedigree to do that. So the next time someone tells you they're a 7th generation witch because their Meemaw liked dandelion wine, smile politely and walk away. You do not need to engage. You don't need to call it out. But you also don't need to be a part of that. You don't need people in your life who are going to try to invalidate your practice because their family supposedly has more experience than yours. It's okay to be new. It's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to learn as you go. That's how we all did it. We all learn as we go, and we all grow as we learn. That's the nature of paganism. It's learning. Here at Aislin's Enchanted Path, we're going to talk honestly about the realities of being pagan. Whether you are a witch, whether you are Wiccan, whether you practice some other type of paganism entirely, we're going to be honest about it. No sparkle filters, no ego fluffing, just truth and honesty, especially honesty with ourselves. Lying to yourself doesn't help you. It doesn't get you anywhere. You're not going to get ahead by claiming you're a 7th generation witch. I don't claim that. And my grandfather was a legitimate water witch in Alberta. He didn't teach me how to do that. It's not generational. It's simply a skill he had that he used, and he was paid well for it. So remember that you are as valid as anyone who claims to be a 7th generation whatever. You are still valid, worthy, and you have the ability to grow and learn just as much as they do, even if they're telling the truth. Even if they are honestly a 7th generation witch and that their practices have been handed down legitimately for 7 generations. That doesn't invalidate your new practice. Your new practice is completely valid, especially as it relates to you. Your practice is unique to you, and because you are a unique individual, your practice will not be the same as someone else's practice, and that's okay and encouraged. It's okay not to be a 7th generation witch. It's okay. It is okay to just be yourself. It is okay if you come from a long line of Christians or a long line of Buddhists and you are just discovering Wicca or witchcraft for the first time today. Welcome. And I hope you enjoy discovering your path, because your discoveries are just as valid as anyone else's. And remember that we've all been there. We've all been a beginner. Even if you come from a family lineage of practitioners, you're still new at some point. You're still starting somewhere. I did. Everyone did. We all had to discover at some point. Now, I was fairly young when I discovered my path, and my path has, of course, evolved over time. But it doesn't matter how old you are. Whether you were 6, 16, or 60 when you discovered paganism and started yourself on your magical path. Welcome and good luck, and you are not less valid than anyone else for any reason whatsoever. Thank you for joining us here at Aislin's Enchanted Path. Join us on the first Friday of every month for another Pathways and Provocations video. Blessed be.